Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Lady Pie-Scythe, and this is a bad idea. Elden Ring is a game with bosses designed on the assumption that they appear alone. But today, we are going to fight them in numbers Miyazaki never intended. Now, I am not treading the ground here. This challenge has been done before, but if you look closer, everyone who's done this challenge has used exactly the same strategy. It's called being good at Elden Ring, and as far as I can tell, it is incredibly overpowered. So we're not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to abuse the most broken possible Spirit Ash, Malenia. With her endgame level stats and ludicrous abilities, Malenia should be able to shred basically the entire game. However, I decided that doing the gameplay equivalent of showing up to Agincourt with a machine gun would be unsporting, so I have throttled her power. Malenia will start out with a scaling of a +0 Spirit Ash, giving her only 27% of her normal attack power, and less than 13% of her usual durability. Each time I defeat a Remembrance boss, I can upgrade her once until +10, at which point she will have her full power. I will also be applying a similar power curve to my own upgrades, so this doesn't become a game of rushing for high-level smithing stones. Each Remembrance boss kill gives me +1 to my somber weapons, and +2.5, rounding down, to my regular smithing stone weapons. Thankfully, Elden Ring is designed so that the power of your attacks is expected to scale linearly with the number of Remembrance bosses you kill, so I will be at an appropriate power level for the entire game. Oh, wait. None of that stuff is true, is it? But that is a problem for me less far in the past. This run started off simple, as Malenia obliterated the Margits while I sat back and watched. All I really had to do here was stay out of the way until Malenia landed Scarlet Rot procs on them, and then I watched them melt. As for why the Scarlet Rot procs were so effective, well, this part is going to involve some numbers, so I'm going to put a death montage in the background for people who don't like those. When you inflict Scarlet Rot on someone with your weapon, it inflicts a total of 16.2% of a target's max HP, plus a flat amount over 90 seconds. Using certain spells, such as Rot Breath and Scarlet Aeonia, inflicts a stronger version of the debuff, dealing 29.7% of the boss's health and damage, plus a smaller flat amount. But when Malenia inflicts Scarlet Rot, it is on a completely different level. This version of the debuff deals 3.3% of the target's maximum health every second. Anything that does not heal is going to be dead on the ground in less than 30 seconds, and the debuff lasts for 300. This is a death sentence for absolutely anything in the game. It's unfair, but what part of this run is fair? Incidentally, that's also my attitude towards the fact that Nepheli died for reasons that were absolutely not my fault. Not that I need to summon her for anything. Godric is even easier than Margit. Even with both extra limbs and extra Godrics, his rematch with Malenia is no different from their first battle. With Godric dead, it was time to set about actually collecting some items from Limgrave and Liurnia. We observe the local wildlife, find a teacher, work on the puzzle for a boss I never actually do, and collect some Glovewort because I apparently could not be bothered to make the Spirit Ash use the ghost kind. This won't come up again, but rest assured that it made the off-camera parts of this run more painful. Anyway, the next weakest Remembrance boss, traditionally, is Renala, so I go into Rye Lucaria and dodge my way through the swarm of geology majors to get to the guard dog. Being in a room with 3 of these things is hair-raising, to say the least, but we do clean them up before I die. The fight with Renala herself does not go so well. Each of the 3 Renalas takes, under ideal circumstances, 4 cycles for me to kill, with 3 times the normal number of scholars trying to taste my ankle bones. My resources are quickly drained. Malenia has the situational analysis capabilities of a pineapple, so she's of essentially no use here. I didn't even make it halfway through the first phase. So instead, I went to fight Radon, and immediately ran into a problem. You can't spirit summon in this arena. I tried to make a mod to fix this, but whatever duct tape magic spirit summoning runs on is totally beyond me, so I gave up and installed a mod from someone else. So thank you to Blah Blah for making what's about to happen possible. And while we're at it, shout out to the 5th Matt for making the enemy multiplayer mod in the first place. And thanks to them, I was able to have the wonderful experience of fighting 3 Radons. While Scarlet Rot does reduce a Radon to dust pretty quickly, he is a massive pain to inflict with it. Malenia always starts in her first phase, which, while durable, is one of the most passive bosses in the game. If I can't last long enough for her to get phase 2'd, she is going to be of little use. Even then, Malenia struggles to land procs on the fast-moving Radons, and can barely kill 1 or 2 with any degree of reliability before dying for good. Trying to kill what is usually multiple Radons with a +2 glorified knitting needle is not going to happen. With this kind of raw damage deficit, I need status effects. So I go kill the Knights Cavalry Seamless Co-op Edition for the Ice Spear. This provides me with a high damage ranged option that quickly builds both stagger and status, a massive step up from my previous armament. With that, Radon is beginning to look beatable. And then this happens. So I have to fight him again and again and again. But after a few more times, he finally dies. Properly. I can claim the hard-won prize of my 2nd tier of upgrades. At this point, I take a trip to Altus for items, but my next real stop is Nokron. Malenia does a very good job of cleaning up 3 of me. Can't say I'm shocked by that one, but it's a bad omen for the future. Once the Imposter Brigade is dismantled, I can go after my real target down here. Regal Ancestor Spirit is a Remembrance boss, and hunting it down will give me my 3rd tier of upgrades. I don't know what Torrent's ancestors did, but mine loved throwing spears at Megafauna, so I feel right at home here. 3 down. At this point, I figure the softest available target is Morgott. He's the one Remembrance boss available who I expect to just die to Scarlet Aeonia. After riding past the oversized Sniper Brigade, Draconic Tree Sentinel is a straightforward Aeonia kill. And I sweep through Lanedell without issue right up until I run into Morgott's Bouncer. Surprisingly, Goldfree of all bosses is the first real brick wall of the run. The man has total status immunity, so Malenia's ability to cheese people to death with Scarlet Rot is useless here. Malenia can't hold out for long against 3 Goldfrees, and neither of us really have the damage to take them out before we're overwhelmed. Unless I happen to suddenly gain the ability to dodge attacks from multiple Goldfrees at once, we need to come back with more health and more damage. So, back to Renala. With an upgraded bleed weapon, her first phase is much easier than before. I expected phase 2 of this battle to be a colossal pain in the neck. But I was completely wrong. Malenia just danced through the bullet hell and cut the Renalas apart. I really thought I was being productive off to the side here, throwing rocks, but this was just not my show. Guess it makes up for whatever the heck she was doing during Phase 1. That's the 4th Remembrance boss down. After this, I got a surprising first try against the Loretta squad, proving that I had the firepower to take down Steps immune bosses. For now, this mostly gave me access to a social situation that the game thankfully did not simulate, but is one fewer boss between me and Estelle. As for Goldfree, I decided to switch off the early game spells and into what will be one of my most reliable tools for the rest of the game, Night Comet. By holding a Staff of Moss in my offhand, I can easily gain a 30% boost to an already powerful spell that pierces through multiple targets. With that, and our increased upgrade level, I finally managed to punch through and break Morgoth's last line of defense. And no, Morgoth's last line of defense is not in fact Morgoth himself. His sword is not a meaningful defense against us, and he goes down first try. That's 5, and my access to mountaintops of the giants is secure. Next on the hit list is Rykard. The good thing about the Rykards is that the magic spear of Rykard slaying can reliably pierce through a lot of them and does hideous amounts of damage. 3 long-ranged powerhouses are still a threat, however. I even got this grab kill animation for the first time in my life. Still, before long, the whole family perishes together. This gives me my 6th tier of upgrades. And then I walk into a wall. See, Fire Giant, to put it mildly, sucks ass to fight under these conditions. My magic has an effective combat range shorter than this man's arms, and with 3 of them rolling around, I can't stay in range for more than a few seconds before one of them caves in my skull from off screen. I want to get to Farah Missoula, but that simply isn't going to happen while I'm still stuck with only 6 bosses worth of upgrades. So instead, I decided to go after Fortisax. Since I absolutely did not want to go in the sewers, that meant fighting 6 Valiant Gargoyles, a boss famous for being fun and good. Thankfully, I have the best possible build for this. Magic damage cuts through Valiant Gargoyles very quickly, and I can easily blast them from outside poison range. Next up is Fia's Champions. Thanks to the power of Night Sorcery, they are completely unable to react to my giant purple comets, so they are easily dispatched. But where's Fia? Of course, she's at the round table still, because I never did her quest. One quest later, Fia is actually where she needs to be. Unfortunately, at this point, I couldn't figure out how to get her to go to sleep. What actually happened here was that I missed a line of dialogue with Fia, but I didn't figure that out until at some point after I beat Fire Giant, so Fortisax out of play here for the moment. Instead, it is time to kill Estelle, and Estelle is trouble. While it's not immune to Scarlet Rot, it has absolutely incredible range and mobility. With these oversized nerd's ropes surrounding you from 3 directions, it's impossible to anticipate the lasers and tail strikes. Plus, they're immune to frostbite, so my ice spears are clipped. Still, I do eventually push through. That's 7. The next Remembrance boss on my list is Moog. I could have gotten the Pureblood medal from Vare, but I didn't want him to mess with my eyes. No, seriously, that was my logic at the time. So instead, I went into the blender that is Castle Sol. I expected the knights to be a problem, but apparently it was also too much to hope for that Malenia could figure out how to operate stairs. But we did stumble our way into Commander Niall's boss room, and I expected him to be a nightmare. But for once, he didn't deliver. His summons are immune to rot and will easily tear Malenia apart. But with her distracting the enemies, I can efficiently scythe down the fodder with Night Comets and leave Malenia to Aeonia the Nialls into the dust. After that, all I had to do was survive being hunted for sport and cut my way through the mosh pit of blood before I made it to the top of Mogwin Palace. As we all know, the solution to Moog is to just one-shot him with Comet Azure. In retrospect, I should probably have actually learned how to do this at some point. Then again, maybe it's for the best that I didn't. See, this isn't my fight, not really. It's Malenia's. And she can do this herself. And with that, there's nothing left to do except fight Fire Giant. Fortunately, I also figured out the key to doing so. Shard Spiral. This spell deals damage continuously for as long as the hitbox is inside the target, and it moves slow. It does completely hideous damage to large bosses, and it's weirdly cheap for what it does. But Fire Giant is a very difficult boss to fight 3 of, and this just takes the difficulty of the fight from a 12 to a 10. Time to break this brick wall with my head, I guess. Finally! That is 9. This was also the point that I finally realized what I'd missed, and came back to fight Fortisax. This fight was a nightmare in more than one sense. Fortisax has the dubious honor of being the only boss in this run to actually lag my computer. This fight is an absolute hellscape of area of effect attacks and special effects. My only recourse is to simply shard spiral the lot of them into oblivion as quickly as I can. On the bright side, I emerge from the stream with my 10th Remembrance boss kill, and that means that the limiters are off. From here on out, Malenia and I will both be fighting at full power. Just in time for the Godskin Sextet, which is not nearly as bad as it sounds. It's pretty easy to bait most of the Godskins onto Millenia and tear into them with stealth. Took a few tries to get right, but it went pretty quickly. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for getting from them to Malekith. This section with the lightning and the bursts took me over half an hour to get past. I had to painstakingly clean out every single one of the flying pests from a distance while dodging lightning. If too many birds saw me, I was just dead. The embarrassing part is that the birds in question can die by falling off the platform. These things are already well on the road to dodohood and they still killed me. But anyway, it's Malekith time. First issue is that the starting zone is incredibly cramped, and Beast Clergyman rushes you like a hippo with rabies. In the time it takes me to summon Malenia, there are 3 bosses sitting on a platform sized for 1, and just getting off it is a challenge in itself. Even Malenia fell off the edge at one point. These fights are frantic. I only need a few shots to kill a Malekith, but getting them in before I get messed up and instantly obliterated is a challenge. But eventually I claim the power of Destined Death. Let's hope it's enough to kill 3 gods. For some reason, I got cocky and thought I could deal with Gideon without Malenia. Didn't quite work out. So instead, I decided to cower behind a pillar while Malenia dealt with it. That didn't work out either, but I did find that Night Comet can kill a Gideon, so things worked out. Next was Godfrey, who was a fairly straightforward affair compared to his yellow counterpart. Sure, Godfrey can kill you from halfway across a football field by flexing his pecs, and sure, poor Lou thinks I'm a basketball, but these bosses are frail and have poor Malenia resistance, so they're not too difficult to clean up. I've learned a lot during this run, and by applying it, I was able to turn this fight into a breeze. Anyway, the next thing I did was fall down an elevator, and off a cliff, more than once. The actual Placidusax fight, though, I'd say that went pretty okay. After only a single death, I concluded that the best way to deal with Radagon was to just let Malenia solo a lot of them. This would both guarantee a Phase 2 Malenia for Elden Beast, and allow me to save all my resources for it. Unfortunately, that's about where the good part of this plan ended. Elden Beast is yet another tanky boss with ludicrous ranged firepower and the slipperiness of a lubricated eel, and by this point my patience for this sort of nonsense was at its end. So, I went for Comet Azure, and I did it properly this time. And that was it. The Elden Beast is slain. I won. I have brought about the Age of Stars and become the Dark Moon Lord. It's over. Right? Yeah, no. There's only one way that this run can end. The Halig Tree is as hellish as you might expect. This place is annoying to navigate at the best of times, and having 3 times the number of overpowered enemies does it no favors. But at this point, I've been through worse from the areas. Loretta is a non-problem, and after a couple hours, I make it all the way through to Malenia's home. This is the end of the line. I've been afraid of this fight from the beginning of the run. I can barely even tell which one of the 4 Malenias in this room is mine. Not to mention that these, unlike my own, have a working version of the butterfly clone attack. But Malenia is my favorite boss. Why else would I do this run? So, I fight. And now the time has come to answer the question of this video. Can Malenia carry a terrible player through Elden Ring with 3 times the number of enemies? Absolutely fucking not.